My sister made my son eat garbage because he has autism and said it was alternative therapy she had seen on Facebook to cure his disorder. I found Nathan, 9 years old, being forced to eat paper and banana peels from the trash while she recorded it to post in a Warrior Moms Against Autism group with 50,000 members. I stood frozen in Jennifer's kitchen doorway, watching my baby boy's tear-streaked face as he chewed on something brown and disgusting, while my sister held her phone steady, narrating like she was some kind of medical expert. Day 3 of the detox protocol, Jennifer said to her phone, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Nathan's body is purging the toxins that cause his condition. His mom refuses to try real solutions, so Aunt Jenny has to step in. She grabbed another handful of coffee grounds from the trash and held it toward his mouth. That's when Nathan saw me. His eyes went wide with shame and relief, and he spit the garbage onto the floor. Jennifer whirled around, and instead of looking guilty, she smiled. Actually smiled. "Oh, good. You're here. I was going to send you the video. Look how well he's doing with the treatment." I walked slowly into the kitchen, every muscle in my body coiled tight. Jennifer was my older sister by 6 years, the one who'd always known better about everything, who'd made a career out of correcting everyone else's life choices. She'd never had children of her own, claimed she was too focused on her wellness consulting business, which was really just her selling overpriced supplements and sharing conspiracy theories to desperate people online. But what she did have was our mother's ear, our extended family's admiration, and 50,000 followers who hung on her every word about natural healing. And now she had my son's humiliation recorded in high definition. I pulled Nathan behind me, feeling him grab onto my shirt with sticky, garbage-covered hands. Jennifer crossed her arms, her phone still recording. "You can't keep babying him, Rebecca. Autism isn't a life sentence. These children can be saved if their parents would just open their minds." I noticed her laptop open on the counter, the Facebook group visible with dozens of comments cheering her on. I noticed the printed protocol taped to her refrigerator with a day-by-day schedule. And I noticed the small notepad where she'd been tracking Nathan's progress with dates, times, and observations. She'd been planning this. My sister had designed a systematic abuse of my child and turned it into content. I picked up Nathan, not caring that he got garbage on my work clothes. He buried his face in my neck, and I could feel him shaking. Jennifer had volunteered to watch him after school twice a week for the past month, claiming she wanted to bond with her nephew. I'd been grateful. I was a single mother working as a legal secretary at Morrison & Associates, one of the biggest law firms in Seattle, and the help seemed genuine. Jennifer had been so sweet about it, bringing Nathan books, taking him to the park, even buying him new clothes. She'd gained my trust completely, and the whole time she'd been feeding him trash, documenting it, and building her audience with his suffering. "I'm calling the police," I said quietly. Jennifer laughed, actually laughed. "For what? Trying to help? Mom already knows about the therapy. She thinks it's wonderful that someone in this family is finally taking Nathan's condition seriously. Call whoever you want, Rebecca. I have 50,000 witnesses who'll testify that everything I did was out of love. I left her house with Nathan clinging to me, but I didn't go home. I drove straight to Seattle Children's Hospital and had my son examined by Dr. Patricia Chen, his regular pediatrician. She documented every finding, photographed the residue around his mouth and the slight redness in his throat from being forced to eat garbage, and listened as Nathan, in his careful, precise way, described what Aunt Jenny had been making him do. Dr. Chen's face went hard as stone. "This is child abuse, Mrs. Morgan. I'm mandated to report this." She did, right there, while I held Nathan. Then she gave me copies of everything, the medical report, her notes, the photographs, all of it. "You'll need these," she said, squeezing my shoulder. "Document everything from this point forward." I took Nathan home, gave him a long bath, made him his favorite dinner of plain pasta with butter, and tucked him into bed with his weighted blanket and his collection of smooth stones he liked to sort by color. He asked me if he was broken. I told him he was perfect, exactly as he was, and that what Aunt Jenny did was wrong, not him. Never him. After he fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I'd worked at Morrison & Associates for 9 years. I knew every attorney in that firm, including Rebecca Pack, their specialist in family law and child protection cases, who'd once told me over lunch that if I ever needed anything at all, I should call her directly. I also knew David Morrison, the senior partner who handled high-profile civil cases and had a reputation for destroying people who hurt children. He'd won a $22 million settlement last year against a daycare center where abuse had occurred. But I didn't call them yet. Instead, I logged into Facebook using a fake account I'd created years ago for exactly this kind of research in my job, and I found Jennifer's Warrior Moms Against Autism group. It was worse than I imagined. Hundreds of posts about cleansing protocols, detox baths, discipline techniques for defiant autistic children, parents sharing videos of their children crying during treatments. And there was Jennifer, a moderator, one of the most active voices, with her posts getting thousands of likes. She'd shared 3 videos of Nathan over the past 2 weeks. In the comments, she called me closed-minded and part of the problem. She'd told these strangers that I was allowing Big Pharma to poison my son and that she was stepping in to save him. 50,000 people had access to my child's face, his private struggles, his worst moments. My sister had made him a spectacle. I took screenshots of everything, every post, every comment, every video, every member of the group I could identify. Then I went deeper. I found Jennifer's business page where she sold her wellness consultations for $300 an hour and her custom supplement protocols for up to $2,000. I found testimonials from parents who credited her with curing their children. I found her tax documents that she'd stupidly stored in a shared cloud folder. She'd always been careless with passwords, showing she'd made over $400,000 last year from her consulting. And I found something else. In one video she'd posted about Nathan, you could see her kitchen counter in the background. On that counter was a bottle of prescription anxiety medication in our mother's name. Our mother, who Jennifer claimed was medication-free, thanks to her guidance, who Jennifer used as proof that natural healing works. Our mother, who Jennifer had been lying about to sell her services. I saved everything. Then I opened a new document and started typing. I worked until 4 a.m, compiling a detailed timeline of every interaction with Jennifer, every conversation, every warning sign I'd missed. I attached Dr. Chen's report, the photographs, the screenshots, Nathan's own statement that I'd carefully written down word for word while he described what happened. I made copies of everything and stored them in 3 separate locations, including a flash drive I put in my safety deposit box at the bank. Then I did something Jennifer would never expect from her weak little sister. I called in sick to work, dropped Nathan off with my neighbor, Mrs. Yun, a retired teacher who Nathan adored and who cried when I told her what happened, and I walked into the offices of Morrison & Associates with a folder under my arm. Rebecca Pack saw me immediately. I laid out everything on her desk and said 4 words I'd been practicing all morning. I want her destroyed. Rebecca looked through the documents, her expression growing darker with each page. Then she picked up her phone and called David Morrison directly. 20 minutes later, I was in his office, a corner space overlooking Elliott Bay, sitting across from a man who'd built his career on making abusers pay. He read everything in complete silence. When he finished, he looked at me and said, "Your sister runs a business that profits from child abuse, shares videos of minors without consent, provides unlicensed medical advice, and has created an organized network of people engaged in similar activities. This isn't just a family matter, Mrs. Morgan. This is a criminal enterprise disguised as a support group." He leaned back in his chair. "I can bury her, but it won't be quick and it won't be quiet. Everyone will know what she did. Your family will know. Her followers will know. Is that what you want?" I thought about Nathan's face covered in garbage, while Jennifer smiled for her camera. I thought about the other children, the ones whose parents were following Jennifer's protocols right now, children who had no one to stop it. I thought about my sister's laugh when I threatened to call the police, her certainty that she was untouchable because she had an audience that loved her. "I want her to lose everything," I said. "I want every person who trusted her to know exactly what she is. I want her business gone, her platform gone, her reputation gone. I want her to understand what it feels like to be powerless." David Morrison smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Then we have work to do." David Morrison didn't waste time. Within 48 hours, he'd assembled what he called the team. Rebecca Pack handled the family law aspects and the criminal referrals. James Chen, their investigator, started tracking Jennifer's financial records and business operations. And Sarah Vance, their technology specialist, began documenting every single post, video, and transaction in Jennifer's online empire. I kept going to work like nothing had changed, kept dropping Nathan off at school, kept smiling at family dinners when my mother asked why I seemed distant. Jennifer, meanwhile, posted another video about Nathan's progress using old footage, claiming he was responding beautifully to her treatments and that I'd finally come around to her methods. She had no idea I'd copied everything from her cloud storage before she could delete it. James found something interesting within the first week. Jennifer wasn't just making money from consultations and supplements. She was running a subscription service, a private tier of her Facebook group where parents paid $49 a month for exclusive protocols and advanced techniques. 7,000 subscribers. That was over $400,000 annually, just from the subscription tier, and she'd reported almost none of it to the IRS. She'd been operating through a business account registered in Delaware under a different name, thinking that would protect her. James handed me a folder 3 inches thick. Your sister's been committing tax fraud for 3 years. The IRS loves cases like this. But we weren't ready to move yet. David wanted everything, every connection, every person involved, every piece of evidence that would make the case ironclad. Sarah discovered that Jennifer had partnerships with supplement companies, earning commission on every product she recommended. Those companies had been paying her through a shell corporation, more unreported income, more fraud. Better yet, 3 of those supplement companies were under FDA investigation for false health claims. Jennifer had tied herself to companies that were already in legal trouble. Sarah looked up from her computer during one of our meetings and said something that made my blood run cold. Rebecca, there are children in that group who've been hospitalized. I found records of at least 4 cases in the past year where kids ended up in emergency rooms after following protocols Jennifer promoted. The parents never connected it to the group because Jennifer tells them that adverse reactions are part of the healing process. We contacted those families. 3 of them agreed to speak with us after James explained what we were building. One mother, Lisa Chen from Portland, started crying on the phone when she realized that the cleansing reaction that had put her 6-year-old daughter in the hospital with severe dehydration wasn't normal. Jennifer had told her to restrict the child's water intake as part of a kidney detox. The little girl had suffered acute kidney injury and spent 5 days in intensive care. Lisa had blamed herself, thought she'd done the protocol wrong. She still had all of Jennifer's messages, the detailed instructions, the reassurances when she'd expressed concern, the shaming when she'd wanted to stop. She told me I was giving up on my daughter, Lisa whispered. She said real mothers don't quit. We had 4 families now, 4 children who'd been harmed, 4 sets of medical records, 4 witnesses. David filed the civil suit first on a Tuesday morning. We sued Jennifer personally, her business entities, and the supplement companies for negligence, fraud, child endangerment, and emotional distress. The lawsuit detailed everything: Nathan's abuse, the other children, the unreported income, the unlicensed medical advice, the exploitation of vulnerable parents. We attached video evidence, medical records, financial documents, and testimonials. We filed it in King County Superior Court, and because it involved child abuse and fraud, the case file became public record immediately. David made sure every local news outlet had a copy on their desk by noon. Jennifer called me at 2 in the afternoon screaming, "What the fuck did you do? I have reporters outside my house. Mom is losing her mind. You're destroying this family over a misunderstanding." I put her on speaker so Rebecca Pack could hear. "A misunderstanding?" I kept my voice flat. "You forced my 9-year-old son to eat garbage and filmed it for profit. You've been running an unlicensed medical practice and committing tax fraud. Those aren't misunderstandings, Jennifer. Those are crimes." She started crying, the manipulative tears she'd used our whole lives to get her way. "I was trying to help him. I love Nathan. You know I'd never hurt him. Please, you have to stop this. We can work it out as a family." "You should have thought about that before you made him eat coffee grounds from your trash can," I said, and hung up. My mother called 30 seconds later. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, begging me to drop the lawsuit, saying Jennifer made a mistake but had good intentions, insisting I was overreacting and tearing the family apart. She'd always chosen Jennifer. When we were kids and Jennifer bullied me, Mom said I was too sensitive. When Jennifer criticized my parenting, Mom said she was just trying to help. When Jennifer told the family I was in denial about Nathan's autism, Mom agreed that I should be more proactive. Well, I was being proactive now. The news stations ran the story that evening. Local wellness consultant accused of child abuse and fraud scrolled across the screen while they showed Jennifer's photo and clips from her public Facebook videos. They interviewed Dr. Patricia Chen, who carefully explained why feeding children garbage had no medical basis and could cause serious harm. They interviewed David Morrison, who stated that we had evidence of multiple children being harmed and a pattern of exploitation. And they mentioned the 50,000-member Facebook group, which immediately caught the attention of Facebook's legal team. By midnight, the Warrior Moms Against Autism group was gone, deleted by the platform for violating community standards on child safety. Jennifer lost her audience in one click. But I wasn't done, not even close. The next morning, James filed complaints with the IRS, the FDA, the Washington State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, and the Better Business Bureau. Each complaint included our evidence file, the unreported income, the unlicensed medical advice, the fraudulent health claims, the partnerships with companies under investigation. David had explained this part to me carefully. Civil suits take time, but regulatory agencies can move fast when children are involved and there's clear evidence of fraud. They have the power to freeze her assets, shut down her business operations, and launch criminal investigations. We're not just suing her, Rebecca. We're dismantling her entire operation. Jennifer posted a public apology video that afternoon. She was crying, makeup running down her face, sitting in what looked like a lawyer's office. "I made a terrible mistake in judgment," she said, reading from notes. "I never intended to harm any child, especially my beloved nephew Nathan. I was trying to help based on information I believed was credible. I'm deeply sorry to Rebecca, to Nathan, and to anyone I've hurt. I'm closing my business and stepping away from social media to reflect on my actions." It was a calculated move, her lawyer's attempt to mitigate damages. The comment section tore her apart anyway. Her own followers, the ones who'd cheered her on, turned on her instantly. "You abused children for profit," one wrote. "I trusted you with advice about my son and you were just scamming us," wrote another. "How much money did you make off our desperation?" Hundreds of comments, thousands, all of them angry, betrayed, disgusted. The supplement companies released statements distancing themselves from Jennifer, claiming they had no knowledge of how she was promoting their products. Two of them immediately stopped paying her commissions and threatened their own lawsuits for reputational damage. Her business bank accounts were frozen by the IRS pending their investigation. Her website went dark. Her Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok accounts were suspended for violating terms of service. In less than a week, Jennifer went from influencer to pariah, from wealthy consultant to broke defendant, from trusted sister to criminal suspect. And I made sure Nathan knew none of it. I kept him away from the news, away from the internet, away from the chaos. He went to school, played with his stones, watched his favorite shows about space exploration. Mrs. Yun helped, and so did his teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, who'd been horrified when I told her what happened. They created a bubble of normalcy around him while I burned down Jennifer's world. My mother showed up at my apartment on Sunday morning, 2 weeks after I'd filed the lawsuit. I'd been expecting her. She looked older, exhausted, confused about how her family had imploded so quickly. "Rebecca, please," she said when I opened the door. "Jennifer's lawyer says she could go to prison. Her house is going into foreclosure. She's lost everything. She made a mistake, but this punishment is too severe. She's your sister." I stood in the doorway, not inviting her in. "She tortured my son for content, Mom. She made money off his suffering. She built a business on exploiting vulnerable children and lying to desperate parents. And when I found out, she laughed at me and said she had 50,000 witnesses who would say she did it out of love." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "But Nathan's fine now. He's recovered. Can't we just move forward as a family?" "Nathan has nightmares about eating garbage," I said quietly. "He asked his therapist if other kids think he's dirty. He asked me if I'm going to make him go back to Aunt Jenny's house. He's 9 years old, and he's afraid of his own aunt. So, no, Mom, he's not fine. And we're not moving forward until Jennifer faces consequences for what she did." My mother stepped back like I'd slapped her. "When did you become so cruel?" I smiled, and it felt strange on my face because there was no warmth in it. "I learned from the best. Jennifer's been cruel our whole lives, and you called it tough love. Now I'm being tough, and suddenly it's a problem." She left without another word. I closed the door and went to check on Nathan, who was building an elaborate marble run in his room, completely absorbed in making sure each piece was exactly level. He didn't look up, but he said, "Grandma was crying." His hearing was exceptionally sharp. "Yes," I said. "Sometimes people cry when they face consequences for their choices." He nodded, still focused on his marbles. "Aunt Jenny made bad choices." "She did. And now she's sad because of the consequences." "Yes." He looked up at me then, his dark eyes serious. "Good." The Washington State Attorney General's office moved faster than David had predicted. 3 weeks after our initial filing, they announced a criminal investigation into Jennifer's business practices, focusing on consumer fraud, practicing medicine without a license, and child endangerment. The press conference was carried live on local news. Nathan was at school, thank God, when I watched Assistant Attorney General Marcus Webb explain that they'd identified over 40 families whose children had suffered harm from following protocols promoted in Jennifer's group. 40 children. The number made me sick. Jennifer's lawyer, a nervous man named Todd Brennan who specialized in white-collar crime, tried to negotiate. He called David's office requesting a meeting to discuss settlement options and avoid further litigation. David scheduled it for a Thursday afternoon and invited me to attend. I sat quietly in the conference room while Todd laid out Jennifer's offer. She would publicly apologize, pay $50,000 to Nathan's college fund, surrender her business licenses, and agree to never work in wellness consulting again. In exchange, we would drop the civil suit and not cooperate with the criminal investigation. David let him finish, then slid a folder across the table. "Counter offer," he said. "Your client pleads guilty to all charges, pays full restitution to every family we've identified, forfeits all assets obtained through her fraudulent business, cooperates completely with the AG's investigation, and serves whatever sentence the court deems appropriate. In exchange, we recommend a sentence at the lower end of the guidelines." Todd's face went pale. That would financially destroy her. She'd lose her house, her car, everything. And you're asking her to guarantee prison time. David leaned back in his chair. "Your client filmed herself forcing a 9-year-old autistic boy to eat garbage while promoting it as medical treatment to 50,000 people. She made over $600,000 last year, most of it unreported income, by telling desperate parents to abuse their disabled children. 40 kids ended up in hospitals. One little girl nearly died from kidney failure. Your client doesn't get to negotiate her way out of this with an apology and a check." He stood up. "We're done here. See you in court." I walked out of that conference room feeling lighter than I had in months. Jennifer had thought she could buy her way out, write a check, and make it disappear like it was a parking ticket. She still didn't understand what she'd done, still saw it as a mistaken judgment rather than systematic abuse. That night, I did something I'd been planning since the lawsuit started. I created a website called Justice for Nathan with help from Sarah Vance. It detailed everything, Nathan's story with his permission, which he gave in his careful way after his therapist helped him understand what it meant, the medical evidence, the other families' stories, and a comprehensive breakdown of Jennifer's business model and how she'd exploited vulnerable parents. We included resources for autism families, fact checks of common alternative therapy myths, and contact information for reporting similar abuse. Sarah made sure the website was search engine optimized, so anyone looking for Jennifer's name or Warrior Moms Against Autism would find it immediately. Within 48 hours, the website had 50,000 visitors. Within a week, 100,000. Media outlets started calling, wanting interviews. I turned down most of them, but agreed to speak with Sarah Klein, an investigative journalist from the Seattle Times who'd won awards for her coverage of medical fraud. She came to my apartment on a Saturday afternoon while Nathan was at a birthday party. I showed her everything: the videos Jennifer had posted, the medical records, the financial documents, the messages from other parents whose children had been harmed. Sarah's article ran on the front page the following Sunday. "The Hidden Cost of Facebook Medicine: How one woman built a six-figure business on child abuse, laid out Jennifer's entire operation in devastating detail. The article included interviews with 4 families, photos of Jennifer's luxury purchases funded by her fraud, screenshots of her most harmful protocols, and expert commentary from pediatricians, autism specialists, and legal experts. The online version included links to our website and resources for parents seeking legitimate help. The article went viral. National news picked it up. Good Morning America requested an interview. The New York Times called it a sobering look at how social media platforms enable medical fraud targeting vulnerable communities. Jennifer's world continued to collapse in spectacular fashion. The IRS filed a criminal complaint for tax evasion, documenting over $400,000 in unreported income over 3 years. The potential sentence was 5 years per count, and they'd identified multiple counts. The FDA opened their own investigation after discovering she'd been making specific health claims about supplements without any scientific basis, violations that carried heavy fines and potential criminal charges. And the families kept coming forward. By the end of March, we had 63 families willing to testify, 63 children who'd been harmed, 63 sets of parents who'd trusted Jennifer and paid the price. My mother stopped calling after I declined to come to Easter dinner. She sent a text instead. Jennifer's in the hospital, anxiety attack. The doctors say the stress is killing her. I hope you're satisfied. I showed the text to Nathan's therapist, Dr. Reeves, during our next session. She looked at it for a long moment, then said, "Your mother is trying to make you responsible for Jennifer's consequences. That's a manipulation tactic. Jennifer put herself in the hospital by abusing children for profit. You're protecting your son and other children from a predator. Those are not equivalent actions." I saved the text anyway, added it to the file David was building. Everything was evidence now. In early April, Todd Brennan called David again. Jennifer wanted to accept the plea deal. The criminal charges were too severe, the evidence too overwhelming, and her legal bills were bankrupting her faster than the IRS could. David scheduled the plea hearing for April 15th, tax day, which he thought was poetic justice. I took the day off work and sat in the courtroom gallery with Lisa Chen and 2 other mothers whose children Jennifer had harmed. Jennifer looked terrible. She'd lost weight, her hair was unwashed, her clothes hung loose on her frame. She kept her eyes down as Judge Margaret O'Connor read the charges: 3 counts of felony child endangerment, 5 counts of fraud, 2 counts of practicing medicine without a license, and 4 counts of tax evasion. Jennifer pleaded guilty to all of it. Her voice was barely a whisper. Judge O'Connor was not sympathetic. "Ms. Morgan, you systematically abused vulnerable children and exploited their parents' desperation for profit. You caused measurable harm to dozens of children, enriched yourself through fraud, and showed no remorse until you were caught. This court finds your actions particularly egregious, given that you targeted disabled children and their families, communities already facing significant challenges." She sentenced Jennifer to 6 years in prison, with parole eligibility after 4. She ordered full restitution to all identified families, forfeiture of all business assets, and a lifetime ban from operating any business related to health, wellness, or childcare. Jennifer collapsed, actually fell to the floor sobbing while her lawyer tried to help her up. The bailiffs had to assist in getting her to the defendant's table. My mother, sitting 3 rows behind me, made a sound like a wounded animal. I didn't turn around. I watched Jennifer's face as reality sank in. 6 years in prison, everything she owned seized to pay restitution, her reputation destroyed forever, her business empire reduced to evidence in a criminal case. Judge O'Connor wasn't finished. "Additionally, Ms. Morgan, you are prohibited from any social media presence under your real name or any pseudonym. You are prohibited from contacting any of the families you defrauded. You will register as a child abuse offender upon release, which will restrict your housing and employment options. You made choices that harm children, and you will live with the consequences of those choices for the rest of your life." The civil suit settled the following week. The supplement companies, desperate to avoid trial and further publicity, paid $2.3 million to be distributed among the families Jennifer had harmed. Nathan's share was $175,000, placed in a trust fund for his future. It wouldn't undo what Jennifer did, but it would pay for his therapy, his education, whatever he needed. The settlement included permanent injunctions against the companies making unsupported health claims about autism. Small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Jennifer's house sold at auction to cover her restitution payments. Her car, her furniture, her jewelry, all of it liquidated. She'd accumulated so much wealth by hurting children, and now it was gone, redistributed to the families she'd exploited. The delicious irony wasn't lost on me. Jennifer reported to Washington Corrections Center for Women on May 1st. I didn't go to watch, but Lisa Chen did. She sent me a photo of Jennifer in handcuffs being led into the facility, her face swollen from crying, her designer clothes replaced with a prison uniform. "Thought you'd want to see?" Lisa's text said. "My daughter asked why the mean lady was going to time out. I told her because she hurt children and wouldn't say sorry until she got caught." I showed Nathan the photo that evening after carefully explaining what was happening in age-appropriate terms. He studied it for a long moment, then went back to organizing his rock collection by geological composition, a new interest his teacher was encouraging. "Is she coming back?" he asked without looking up. "Not for a very long time," I said. "And when she does, she won't be allowed near you ever again." He nodded, running his fingers over a piece of quartz. "Good. But I wasn't done. David had warned me that civil suits and criminal cases were just the beginning. The real change, he'd said, comes from making sure this can't happen again." So I worked with Sarah Klein at the Times to expose the infrastructure that enabled Jennifer. We investigated Facebook's policies on medical misinformation and found they were barely enforced for private groups. We documented dozens of similar groups still operating, still promoting dangerous therapies, still exploiting disabled children. Sarah's follow-up article, "Facebook's Disability Fraud Problem," forced the platform to respond. They announced new policies requiring medical claims and health-related groups to be fact-checked, mandatory reporting mechanisms for suspected child abuse content, and prohibition of financial transactions related to unlicensed medical advice. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Next, I went after the supplement industry. With David's help, I testified before a state legislative committee about how Jennifer had partnered with companies that knowingly paid her to promote unproven products to desperate families. I brought medical records, financial documents, and 3 other mothers whose children had been harmed. I spoke for 45 minutes about Nathan eating garbage while supplement companies profited from the referrals Jennifer generated. 6 months later, Washington passed the Nathan's Law, requiring supplement companies to verify the credentials of anyone they partner with for marketing and holding them liable for false health claims made by their associates. My mother tried one more time to reconcile in late summer. She came to my apartment unannounced on a Sunday morning. I almost didn't let her in, but Nathan was at a friend's house and I was curious what she'd say. She sat on my couch, hands folded in her lap, looking frail in a way that was probably calculated. "I visited Jennifer yesterday," she started. "She's not doing well. The other inmates are cruel to her because of what she did. She's in protective custody most of the time. She cries every time I visit." I said nothing, just waited. Mom continued, "She's your sister, Rebecca. She made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but she's paid for them. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? To let her write to Nathan, to maybe have some kind of relationship when she gets out?" I stood up and opened my laptop, pulling up the folder I kept of everything Jennifer had done. I showed my mother the video of Nathan eating garbage, the one Jennifer had been so proud of she'd posted it publicly. I made her watch the whole thing. "This is your grandson," I said quietly as Nathan's crying filled the room from the video. "This is what your daughter did to him while you were telling me I was overreacting about his diagnosis. She filmed this. She was proud of this. She made money from this." My mother's face crumpled, but I wasn't finished. I showed her the medical records from the Portland family whose daughter nearly died. I showed her the messages where Jennifer told parents to ignore their children's screams because healing is uncomfortable. I showed her the financial records proving Jennifer made over $600,000 by convincing parents to abuse their disabled children. "She didn't make mistakes, Mom. She made choices. Every single day for years, she chose to hurt children for profit. She chose to exploit the most vulnerable families she could find. She chose to build a business on suffering." I closed the laptop. "And you're choosing her again. You're here asking me to forgive her, to expose Nathan to her again, but you've never once asked Nathan how he's doing. You've never apologized for believing her over me, for calling me negligent, for supporting her therapy before you knew I'd stopped it. So no, Mom. Jennifer doesn't get forgiveness. She doesn't get letters to Nathan. She doesn't get a relationship when she's released. She gets exactly what she earned. Nothing. My mother left in tears, and I haven't spoken to her since. Nathan asked about her once. I told him the truth in simple terms. Grandma chose to support someone who hurt you instead of protecting you. That's not what family does. We're better off without people like that. He accepted it with the straightforward logic he applied to everything. Grandma made bad choices. Therefore, Grandma faces consequences. He understood cause and effect better than most adults. Work became easier after everything went public. My colleagues at Morrison & Associates treated me differently, with a respect that had been missing before. Senior partners asked my opinion in meetings. They gave me better assignments, more responsibility. David Morrison personally recommended me for a promotion to senior legal secretary with a $20,000 raise. You handled this situation with incredible strength and strategic thinking, he said during my review. Those are qualities we value here. But the real victory came in September when the autism advocacy organization Disability Rights Washington invited me to speak at their annual conference. 200 people packed the room to hear Nathan's story and learn about the warning signs of fraudulent alternative therapies. I spoke for an hour, taking questions from parents, teachers, therapists, and advocates. At the end, a mother approached me crying. My sister's been pushing me to try a diet protocol she found online, she said. After hearing you, I looked into it. It's dangerous. You saved my daughter from what Nathan went through. That moment, that one mother protecting her child because of what I'd shared, made everything worth it. Nathan thrived. Without Jennifer's toxic presence and my mother's constant criticism, he blossomed. His teacher reported he was more confident, more willing to try new things, more engaged with his peers. His therapist said he was processing the trauma healthily, that his nightmares had stopped, that he felt safe again. He joined a social skills group for autistic kids his age and made 2 friends who shared his interest in geology. He started sleeping through the night. He smiled more. One evening in October, while we were making dinner together, his preferred way of connecting, he said, "Mom, I'm glad Aunt Jenny's gone." I stopped chopping vegetables and looked at him. "Why's that, buddy?" He carefully measured pasta into the pot, his movements precise and deliberate. "Because now nobody tells me I'm broken. You say I'm perfect. My teacher says I'm smart. Dr. Reeves says my brain is just different, not wrong. Aunt Jenny said I needed to be fixed." He looked up at me with those serious dark eyes. "But I'm not broken, so I don't need fixing." I hugged him, careful not to squeeze too tight because he didn't like that. "You're absolutely right. You're perfect exactly as you are." December brought an unexpected development. The FBI contacted David Morrison about Jennifer's case. They'd been investigating a network of online groups promoting dangerous alternative therapies for disabled children, and Jennifer's Warrior Moms Against Autism group had been part of a larger pattern. Special Agent Victoria Torres met with me at David's office on a Friday afternoon, her credentials laid out on the table between us. "Mrs. Morgan, your documentation of your sister's activities has been invaluable to our investigation," she said. "We've identified a network of 47 similar groups operating across multiple platforms, with approximately 230,000 members collectively. These groups share protocols, sell products to each other, and actively recruit vulnerable parents. Your sister was a significant node in this network, but she wasn't the only one. Agent Torres showed me flowcharts of money movement between group administrators, supplement companies, and consulting services. Millions of dollars changing hands, almost none of it reported as income, all of it based on convincing parents that their disabled children could be cured through increasingly dangerous methods. We're building a RICO case," she explained. "Racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations. These groups operate like an organized crime network, just with wellness branding instead of traditional criminal enterprises. We'd like you to testify before a grand jury about how Jennifer recruited members, monetized the group, and coordinated with other administrators." I agreed immediately. This was bigger than Jennifer now. This was about dismantling an entire system that preyed on families like mine. The grand jury testimony happened in January. I spent 6 hours answering questions about Jennifer's operation, walking federal prosecutors through the evidence David and I had compiled. They were particularly interested in the financial connections between group administrators and supplement companies, the coordination of messaging across groups, and the systematic suppression of members who questioned the protocols or reported adverse effects. 2 weeks later, the FBI executed simultaneous raids on 17 locations across 12 states, seizing computers, financial records, and evidence of child abuse. 43 people were arrested, including several of Jennifer's colleagues, who'd been moderating similar groups and running comparable schemes. The news coverage was extensive, with reporters calling it one of the largest online fraud and child endangerment operations ever uncovered. Jennifer suddenly became useful to federal prosecutors. They offered her a deal: testify against the network organizers, provide evidence of coordination and financial arrangements, and potentially reduce her sentence. She took it, of course. I watched via video link as she gave her deposition, describing how she'd been recruited into the network by a woman named Patricia Simmons who ran a similar group in California. Patricia had taught Jennifer how to monetize her audience, which supplement companies paid the best commissions, and how to handle members who questioned the protocols. Jennifer had paid Patricia 20% of her earnings as a consulting fee, which was really a kickback for being brought into the network. The detail Jennifer provided was stunning. She named names, showed emails, explained the whole corrupt system. Her cooperation led to 37 convictions. The network's leaders got sentences ranging from 8 to 15 years. The supplement companies involved paid over $20 million in fines and settlements. And Facebook finally took meaningful action, permanently banning over 300 groups and 6,000 individuals involved in promoting dangerous medical misinformation targeting disabled children. It wasn't perfect. New groups would pop up with different names, but it was significant damage to an organized system of abuse and exploitation. In March, Jennifer's sentence was reduced by 18 months in exchange for her testimony. She'd serve 4.5 years instead of 6. My mother sent me an email, the first communication in months. See, Jennifer did the right thing. She helped put away worse people. Maybe you can soften your heart now. I deleted it without responding. Jennifer hadn't developed a conscience. She'd simply traded information for leniency, the same calculating move she'd made her entire life. She was still the same person who'd forced my son to eat garbage, who'd built a business on child abuse, who'd laughed when I confronted her. A shorter sentence didn't change what she was. Nathan turned 11 in April. We celebrated with a small party. His 2 friends from social skills group, Mrs. Yun, his teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, and his therapist, Dr. Reeves. No family, because there wasn't any family worth including anymore. Nathan had requested a geology-themed party, so we had rock candy, mineral specimens as party favors, and a volcano cake that actually erupted with baking soda and vinegar. He was radiant, happy, surrounded by people who loved and accepted him exactly as he was. After the other kids left, Dr. Reeves pulled me aside. "I've been working with Nathan for almost 2 years now," she said. "When you first brought him in, he had symptoms of PTSD, anxiety, and significant trust issues. He's made remarkable progress. The trauma Jennifer inflicted is healing. He knows he's safe, he knows he's loved, and he knows you'll protect him. That's everything." She paused. "I want you to know that what you did, holding your sister accountable and removing her permanently from Nathan's life, gave him the security he needed to heal. Some parents struggle with that kind of decisive action, especially against family. You didn't hesitate. That saved him." In June, I received a letter forwarded through David's office. Jennifer had written from prison, 5 pages of small, cramped handwriting. I almost threw it away unread, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was a masterpiece of manipulation. She apologized profusely, claimed she'd been manipulated herself by Patricia Simmons and the network, said she'd found God in prison and understood now how wrong she'd been. She talked about the therapy she was receiving, the classes she was taking, how she'd dedicated her life to making amends. Then came the real purpose. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking anyway. Not for me, but for family. Mom's health is declining, and it breaks her heart that we're divided. Could we possibly work toward reconciliation? I want to be part of Nathan's life again, to show him through my actions that people can change." I read it 3 times, analyzing every word choice, every emotional appeal, every subtle pressure point she was trying to activate. Then I wrote back. 1 page, printed, no emotion. Jennifer, you didn't write this letter because you've changed. You wrote it because you want something, same as always. You want back into Nathan's life so you can tell yourself you're redeemed. You want me to forgive you so your conscience feels better. You want our family reunited so Mom stops making you feel guilty. But here's what you're not getting. Nathan doesn't need you. He's happy, healthy, and thriving without you. Your presence in his life was toxic, and your absence has been healing. You don't get to hurt my son, serve a reduced sentence, and then demand access to him again because you took some classes in prison. Mom's health is declining because of stress, and that stress exists because you committed crimes that destroyed our family. That's on you, not me. I'm not keeping you from Nathan out of spite. I'm keeping you from him because you're dangerous, because you harmed him once and I will not risk it happening again, and because he has explicitly said he doesn't want you in his life. He's 11 now, old enough to make that decision, and he's made it. You're not part of his story anymore. When you're released from prison in a few years, you will not contact Nathan. You will not contact me. You will not show up at his school or our home. The restraining order I filed is permanent. If you violate it, you'll go back to prison. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Don't write again. Rebecca. I sent it certified mail and copied David on everything. Jennifer never wrote back. Summer arrived, bringing warm weather and longer days. Nathan and I took weekend trips to state parks, collecting rocks and fossils, hiking easy trails, enjoying the simple pleasure of being together without drama or judgment. He talked about wanting to be a geologist when he grew up, maybe studying volcanoes or crystals. I encouraged every interest, every dream, every curiosity. This was the childhood he deserved, full of wonder and support, free from people who saw him as broken or profitable. One evening in late August, while we were watching a documentary about the solar system, Nathan's current obsession, he said something that stopped my heart. Mom, did Aunt Jenny go to jail because of me? I paused the documentary and turned to face him fully. No, buddy. Aunt Jenny went to jail because of her choices. She chose to hurt you. She chose to hurt other kids. She chose to break laws. Those were all her decisions. You didn't do anything wrong. You were brave when you told me what happened, and that helped protect other children, but Aunt Jenny's consequences are because of what Aunt Jenny did, not because of you. He thought about this, his face serious in the way it got when he was processing complex information. So if someone makes bad choices, they get consequences, even if they're family? Especially if they're family, I said, because family is supposed to protect each other. And when they don't, when they hurt each other instead, that's even worse than when strangers do it. Aunt Jenny broke trust that was supposed to be sacred. He nodded slowly. I'm glad she has consequences. Other kids are safer now. Yes, they are. You helped make that happen. He smiled, satisfied with the logic of cause and effect, justice and consequences. Then he unpaused the documentary and went back to learning about Jupiter's moons, the matter resolved in his mind. That night, after Nathan fell asleep, I opened my laptop and looked at the file I'd maintained throughout this entire process. Photos, documents, legal filings, news articles, everything that had happened since that terrible day I found my son eating garbage in Jennifer's kitchen. 2 years of fighting, exposing, testifying, and protecting. 2 years of watching Jennifer lose everything while Nathan gained everything that mattered. Safety, confidence, peace. I saved one final document to the file. A summary I'd written for Nathan when he was older, when he'd want to understand everything that happened and why I made the choices I made. The last line read, I want you to know that I would do it all again without hesitation. Protecting you, believing you, and holding your abuser accountable was not just my right as your mother, it was my sacred responsibility. You deserved justice, and I made sure you got it. You are not broken. You never were. And anyone who tried to fix you never understood how perfect you already are. Jennifer was released from prison in October, 4.5 years after her sentencing. She'd served her time quietly, kept her head down, participated in all required programs. The news of her release came through David's office, a courtesy notification because of the restraining order. "She's being released to a halfway house in Spokane," he told me over the phone. "She's required to register as a child abuse offender, which will appear in public databases. She's prohibited from any contact with you or Nathan, and she's banned from social media under her real name. The parole conditions are strict." I thanked him and ended the call, feeling nothing. Jennifer's release didn't scare me or concern me. She was a registered offender now, her name permanently attached to child abuse charges. Any employer would find it with a basic background check. Any landlord, any potential friend who bothered to Google her. Nathan, now 13, didn't even react when I told him. "Okay," he said, and went back to studying for his geology quiz. He was in 7th grade now, thriving in a specialized school program for gifted students. He'd been invited to present his rock collection at a regional science fair. He had a small group of friends who shared his interests, and he'd recently started a geology club at school. Jennifer's shadow hadn't touched him in years. A few weeks after her release, my mother tried one final time. She called from a number I didn't recognize, so I answered by mistake. "Rebecca, please listen," she said, her voice weak and trembling. "Jennifer's living in a terrible place. She can only find minimum wage work, and people recognize her from the news. She's struggling so much. She's paid for what she did. Can't we be a family again?" "We were never a family, Mom," I said calmly. "A family protects its most vulnerable members. A family believes children when they report abuse. A family doesn't choose the abuser over the victim. You chose Jennifer over Nathan repeatedly, and even now, you're calling to advocate for her comfort, while you haven't asked about your grandson's life in years." Silence on the line. Then, "He's my grandson too. I have rights." "No, you don't. Grandparent rights don't exist when the grandparent enabled abuse. You knew what Jennifer was doing. I showed you the evidence. You chose to minimize it, excuse it, and blame me for pursuing justice. Those were your choices, and these are your consequences. Don't call this number again." I blocked her and moved on with my day. Jennifer attempted contact once, violating the restraining order. She created a fake Facebook profile under the name Jenny Morrison and tried to friend Nathan's school's public page. The school's social media monitor caught it because they'd been briefed about Jennifer, and they reported it immediately to both the police and Nathan's parole officer. Jennifer was arrested for violating parole conditions and served an additional 6 months. After that, she finally seemed to understand that I'd meant every word. There would be no reconciliation, no second chances, no path back into our lives. That door was welded shut, and I was the one holding the torch. Nathan graduated 8th grade with honors, particularly excelling in earth sciences. At his graduation ceremony, I sat in the audience watching him receive an award for academic excellence, and I thought about the alternative timeline where I'd accepted Jennifer's apology, where I'd prioritized family unity over Nathan's safety, where I'd taught him that abusers deserve forgiveness. In that timeline, Nathan would have learned his trauma didn't matter. He would have learned that family loyalty meant accepting abuse. He would have learned that he wasn't worth fighting for. But in this timeline, the real one, Nathan learned that he was worth protecting at any cost. He learned that justice matters, that consequences are real, and that the people who love you will move mountains to keep you safe. He learned that he was never the problem. Autism was never something to fix, and anyone who tried to change him was wrong. These lessons would shape him for life. Several months later, I received an email from Lisa Chen, the mother from Portland whose daughter had nearly died from Jennifer's kidney detox protocol. "Rebecca, I wanted you to know that Maya's thriving. She's 10 now, fully recovered and doing beautifully. She asks about Nathan sometimes, remembers him from when we all met during the trial. She says he was kind to her. I tell her you're both warriors, that you saved other families by being brave. I hope Nathan knows how many children are safe because of what you did." I showed the email to Nathan that evening. He read it carefully, then said, "Maya's the girl with the curly red hair who liked my amethyst geode?" His memory for details was encyclopedic. "That's her. Tell her, Mom, I'm glad she's okay, and tell her I still have that geode. It's in my collection." That was Nathan, focused on the concrete details that mattered to him, understanding the impact of our actions but not dwelling on it. He'd been part of something important, but it didn't define him. He was defined by his interests, his achievements, his growing independence. I wrote back to Lisa, sharing Nathan's message, and we began a casual correspondence. Our children had been wounded by the same predator and healed through the same process of justice and accountability. There was solidarity in that. Jennifer tried once more to insert herself into the narrative. A true crime podcast contacted me about doing an episode on the case. The host, a woman named Michelle Park, explained that Jennifer had reached out to her claiming she wanted to share her side of the story, to explain how she'd been manipulated by the network and had become a victim herself. "I wanted to give you the opportunity to respond before we air anything," Michelle said during our phone call. "I've researched the case extensively, and frankly, Jennifer's version doesn't match the documented evidence. But she's claiming this podcast is part of her redemption arc." I laughed, actually laughed. Jennifer doesn't have a redemption arc. She has a pattern of manipulation that continues even after prison. She wasn't manipulated by the network. She eagerly joined it because it made her money and gave her power. The evidence showed she was recruiting other administrators, teaching them her techniques, and taking a cut of their profits. She was a willing, enthusiastic participant who got caught. "That's what the court records show," Michelle agreed. "Would you be willing to participate in the episode to provide the documented facts?" I considered it. Part of me wanted to ignore Jennifer completely, refuse to give her any more attention, but another part understood that silence allowed manipulators to control narratives. "I'll participate on one condition," I said. "You include interviews with the other families Jennifer hurt. This isn't a story about Jennifer's redemption. It's a story about how she systematically abused children for profit, and how those families fought back. If you're going to tell it completely." The podcast episode aired in spring. Michelle did excellent work, presenting the facts without sensationalism, letting the evidence speak for itself. She interviewed me, Lisa Chen, 2 other mothers, Agent Torres from the FBI, and David Morrison. Jennifer's portion was brief, her attempts at sympathy undermined by the mountain of contradictory evidence. The comments section filled with listeners expressing disgust at Jennifer's continued manipulation and admiration for the families who'd held her accountable. One comment stood out. "This is what justice looks like. Not forgiveness, not redemption, not second chances for abusers. Actual consequences and protection for victims. Every parent should be like Rebecca Morgan." Nathan was 14 now, starting high school, taking advanced placement courses, and talking about college programs in geology. He'd grown tall and lean, his dark hair always slightly messy from running his hands through it when he was thinking. He still had his precise way of moving, his careful speech patterns, his intense focus on his interests. And he was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. He had friends who appreciated his encyclopedic knowledge of mineralogy. He had teachers who challenged him academically. He had a mother who loved him unconditionally exactly as he was. One afternoon, while we were organizing his rock collection for a presentation at a university's youth science symposium, he asked, "Do you think Aunt Jenny ever understood why what she did was wrong?" I thought about this carefully. I think she understands it was illegal, and that she got caught. I'm not sure she understands on a deeper level that she caused real harm to real people, because understanding that would require empathy she doesn't seem to have. She's sorry about the consequences, but I don't know if she's sorry about her actions. Nathan nodded, sorting his specimens by hardness. That's sad for her. She can't learn if she doesn't understand. That's very insightful, I said, but it's not your problem to fix or worry about. She made her choices and she lives with them. You made different choices and you get different results. He held up a piece of pyrite, examining how the light caught its surface. Fool's gold looks shiny like real gold, but it's different underneath. Aunt Jenny was like that. Looked nice, but was different underneath. The metaphor was perfect. That's exactly right, buddy. Later that year, the Department of Justice released a comprehensive report on the online medical fraud network that Jennifer had been part of. The report detailed how the network had operated, how much money had moved through it, and, most importantly, how many children had been identified as victims. The final count was over 800 children across 32 states. 800 children who'd been subjected to dangerous, fraudulent therapies promoted by people who claimed to be helping them. The report credited the investigation that started with our case as the catalyst for dismantling the network. Agent Torres sent me a copy with a handwritten note. None of this happens without you refusing to accept what your sister did. 800 families have you to thank. That little boy you're protecting is incredibly lucky to have you as his mother. I kept the note in Nathan's file, the one I'd been maintaining throughout this entire journey. Someday, when he was grown, if he ever doubted whether holding Jennifer accountable had been the right choice, he could read this file and see the evidence. He could see that justice wasn't about revenge or cruelty. It was about protection, accountability, and ensuring that abusers faced consequences so they couldn't hurt anyone else. It was about teaching him that he mattered, that his trauma was real, and that the people who loved him would fight for him without hesitation or regret. Jennifer faded into obscurity, exactly as she deserved. She worked minimum-wage jobs when she could find them, lived in poor conditions, and had no social connections beyond other people at her halfway house who were also rebuilding after prison. Her name brought up only the criminal case and news articles about the network. There was no redemption arc, no inspiring comeback story, no narrative where she learned and grew. There was only a woman who'd hurt children for profit and paid the price, spending the rest of her life in the diminished circumstances her choices earned her. My mother passed away 2 years after Jennifer's release. I found out through a former family friend who thought I should know. There was a small funeral I didn't attend. I sent no flowers, no card, no acknowledgement. Nathan asked if we should go, and I explained that we'd mourned the loss of his grandmother years ago when she chose Jennifer over him. The woman who died was a stranger who'd stopped being his grandmother the day she defended his abuser. He accepted this with his characteristic logic, and we moved on. We heard through channels that Jennifer attended the funeral, sitting alone in the back, approaching no one. Our relatives apparently understood by then what she'd done and wanted nothing to do with her. She'd lost not just her business and freedom, but every relationship she'd ever had. Complete isolation, the natural consequence of being someone who hurt children. Nathan received early acceptance to the University of Washington's geology program with a full academic scholarship. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday, and he read it 3 times before looking up at me with the closest thing to pure joy I'd ever seen on his careful face. "I got in," he said, and then again, "I got in." We celebrated with his favorite meal and called his friends to share the news. That evening, sitting on our couch while Nathan researched the program's faculty and course offerings, I reflected on the journey from that terrible day in Jennifer's kitchen to this moment of triumph. People had told me I was too harsh, that family deserved forgiveness, that I should let go of anger for my own peace. But those people were wrong. My peace didn't come from forgiving Jennifer. It came from knowing I'd protected my son completely, that I'd removed every threat to his well-being without compromise or hesitation. My peace came from watching Nathan thrive without the shadow of abuse hanging over him. My peace came from knowing 800 other families were safer because I'd refused to stay silent. Jennifer got exactly what she deserved. Not forgiveness, not redemption, not a second chance. She got consequences, justice, and the permanent mark of being someone who hurt children. And Nathan got exactly what he deserved: a childhood free from abuse, a mother who believed and protected him, and a future limited only by his own ambitions and interests. That was the victory. Not revenge, but justice. Not cruelty, but consequences. Not family reunification, but healthy boundaries that protected the innocent and excluded the harmful. Some people don't deserve second chances. Some actions can't be forgiven. Some relationships need to end permanently for everyone's safety and well-being. I learned that lesson, taught it to my son, and never once regretted the choices I made. Jennifer spent 4.5 years in prison and will spend the rest of her life marked as a child abuser, struggling to survive on the margins of society, isolated and diminished. Nathan spent those same years growing stronger, smarter, happier, and more confident, preparing for a future full of possibilities. That disparity, that stark difference in outcomes, is exactly what justice looks like.